I'm in Max. You are listening to Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. I'm in Max. Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
I just put my mic on. Hi. Welcome to Season 22, Episode 15 of the Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
This is Tappy.
This is Gina.
And we had a convention.
We did.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
It was lots of
It was a
fun.
very good convention.
In this episode of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast, let me just say thank you to the people at Strategicon for being such wonderful hosts and running such a wonderful con. We appreciate them more than they appreciate us.
Yes.
I don't mean that.
I think that's appropriate.
In this episode, Steven writes in to question Rule 0, at least one definition of it. Sam from Lakewood says, space combat isn't boring.
God damn
And
it.
Isaac from Texas sends us a success story. But first, if you would like to email us, you can do so
Okay.
by opening up your email program. And in the to field, type in happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We're also on social media. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram.
Google.
G plus, maybe.
We exist on the Google program.
We do. We exist on the Google program.
Don't know if you should be quite that proud about that. That's not that big of a thing.
And that's Happy Jack's RPG, all in word, in most of those places. Although I don't know if it is on the Google program. I don't remember. I know there is. It's probably filled with spam now. Because I haven't been on G plus in years.
Did I tell you that somebody actually asked me if the Epoxy Boggards were on the Google program once?
Really?
And it was one of my clients when I was teaching Pilates. He goes,
On the Google program?
Yeah. Is your band on the Google program? And I said, yes, it is. She said, oh, good.
Is it a diet?
like Grand Old Opry or something.
As it was the Yellow Pages, right? That you had to put in your thing to assume that Google was just this computer Yellow Pages. And if you decided to put your ad in it, then it was searchable.
Right.
Well, you know.
There hasn't been a search engine like that for a very long time. Yeah. I'm going to go on to the first email.
Cool beans.
We've already gotten off the rails.
Questioning Rule 0 from Stephen. Greetings, happiest of Jacks. It is I, Steve, an actual pseudonym for the Malkavian Madness Network. No, really, go look it up. Today, I'm here to rant about Rule 0 and how it is worth just about 0. Wrath and Glory has this to say about Rule 0. One of the most important rules of Wrath and Glory is that the rules aren't as important as the fun of the game. It seems okay at first blush, but let's dig deeper into the text. While it is always good to help... This is a quote from the book. While it is always good to help the game master with rules clarification and game knowledge, this is, after all, a rather weighty tome. No one wants to halt the natural flow of the game with lengthy and often boring rules discussion. That is what I take umbrage with. You ended your sentence with a preposition, sir. That is with which I take umbrage. There. No, you don't have to do that.
Or fuck that.
There are lots of things in life I don't want to do, but I have to do anyway. You think I like cutting grass?
I don't know.
You don't?
No.
What kind
Oh, I pay someone
grass?
to do that. What kind of grass?
Yeah,
No, you don't want to
mean-
cut your grass.
Yeah, no.
Does it? I mean, why?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, suppose you could cut it with tobacco.
if you don't want to, there's this great thing we have of exchanging a form of currency for goods and services.
Yes. You think my idea of a stellar time is stopping a game to have a rules discussion? No. I don't want to do it either. But occasionally, you have to do these sorts of things. Rule 0 enshrines this idea that it's always better to make a ruling and move on than to deliberate. Instead of asking you to trust me, I'll just quote from the relevant text. Excuse me. I had soup. It was so good. During the game,
Trying it a second time.
and it's good too.
I don't believe you.
Oh, well, next time I burp, I'll
Baby
share.
bird.
During the game, let the game master. This is a quote again. During the game, let the game master run things how they see fit, and trust that they will know what they're doing. It's always better to come up with a way to resolve an issue and move on than it is to slow down the game to check the rules, even if the decision doesn't follow the precise wording in this book. Here's the thing: protecting temporary or passing fun at the cost of enduring good times is a bad strategy. This is why we have session 0 discussions, because it's better to waste a complete game session on ironing out expectations and issues than having misunderstandings later. You can't anticipate everything, though, and Rule 0 essentially espouses that you steamroll right the fuck over that shit, lest you solve anything before it does long-term damage. We all know this. That's why most of us are willing to take longer in our deliberations if we know something important is on the line, such as PC death contingent on the rules call. See, no one loves procedural issues. Even contrarians don't want everything to turn into an argument constantly.
No, I disagree.
I don't know. Believe me, I've been on the internet. Believe me, it gets old really quick. That's true. But even I acknowledge that sometimes having that conversation or argument now is important. Sure, don't sweat the small stuff, but be wise enough to know when things are important and throw on the brakes. The real Rule 0 should be to use your brain and stop taking advice just because it sounds snappy or it's written in a game book.
Wait, if you don't take advice that's written in a game book, then the rules are out the window.
And if you don't take advice just because it's snappy, nobody's going to listen to us.
That's right.
Yeah.
'Cause
So
we're
anyway.
all snap and no information. Yeah.
That's his email. And I don't have his signature, but that's
Steve.
Steven.
Steven
from-
Malkavian Madness Network.
Where's Steven? Does he even say where it's from?
Says the
No, he doesn't
beginning.
say where it's from. Anyway, I agree with some of it. I don't agree with all of it. When it comes to death, like if you're going to kill a character, I say stop the game, look the rule up, and make sure you're being fair. And I think that's the biggest thing is you want to make sure when something major is going to happen in the game, you want it to be fair.
Yeah.
To me,
I think that you always want things to be fair.
yes.
And fairness also in the scope of like how the rules actually work. And I feel that's kind of what he's taking umbrage right here is he doesn't agree with the ruling of being how the rules generally work. Right?
Yeah,
Because
that's what you're saying.
rules aren't
The meta rule of the rules.
right.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
how rules work determines how a game plays.
Right.
Right? Like a game that works really well with pulp doesn't necessarily work well for investigation.
Right.
And you want systems that support how the game is played. I mean, I talk way too much about that kind of shit. So I've recently been on this kick of like, what are rules and why do we have them? And what I have right now for that is because they are a fair adjudication of what's happening. Because when more than one person wants something to happen, including like just a person acting by themselves and the GM wanting to work with them, you have to go, I want this to happen. Well, I would like this to happen. Okay, well, how can we determine which thing happens? And so if a GM comes up with a way for something to work that doesn't feel fair, that impacts your fun. It can impact your fun for a very long time.
Yeah.
And since we always say that if you're having fun, you're doing it right, then not fudging the rules in a way that feels fair isn't doing it right. I don't think anybody thinks you always have to go exactly by the exact letter of the law because it says this and this and this, and you can say, fuck it, if it still feels fair to everybody.
Yeah.
And if that one guy it doesn't feel fair to, he's going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I think it kind of depends on your table.
100%.
But that, I think you're saying the same thing here, that what Stephen is saying that irritates him is that this particular game, Wrath and Glory, is from the outset saying, pay no attention to our silly little rules if it stands in the way of you having fun. And he's saying that seems ill-advised.
Well, that's the thing I hate most about the Palladium system. I mean, I think it was the the supplemental book, I forget what it's called, for Rifts, there was like some people wrote into them with some things that would happen. Like somebody threw a grenade at the party, and so somebody jumped on it, and it blew up, and went, it's fine, it's only 46 damage. Who cares? It's just a fucking grenade.
Right.
Like, what's the problem? And his answer was, well, if it doesn't make sense, throw the rules out. So it's like, okay, well, you just told me that your rules suck, and I shouldn't pay attention to them.
Right, because I think
well, thanks for letting me know.
most people play games not only for, like you said, the primary, maybe guideline is that there is a fair adjudication of what's happening in the narrative. You and I maybe disagree about what the outcome is.
And
Let's
so
roll some dice.
Yeah.
In addition to that, though, there are systems that have mechanical, Monster Hearts is one of them, lots of systems that have other mechanical components that help you tell the kind of story that you want to tell. So it's not necessarily adjudication, but it's...
But no, those mechanical things are moving you towards a certain type of story. That is a mechanical adjudication of what it is, because they're supporting moving towards a specific thing.
I don't call that adjudication. I would call that more supporting the type of narrative you want to tell, whatever the trope or the tone or the...
That is what rules do.
Yeah. In addition to adjudicating.
Well, no, because how they adjudicate what you are doing lead you down a path of how to do it.
So tomato, you're both saying the same
exactly.
thing.
Yeah,
High five. Totally agree.
I
had to smile because, but what you're saying, I totally agree with, and I think if you were at a table with a bunch of people who don't really at all care about the rules, then maybe you do play with their rule 0, which is don't let the rules stand in the way of you having fun. But I think the vast majority of people want that type of some sort of rule set. And you may encounter a game that you don't enjoy that particular rule set, and you veer towards other games. But you want some sort of.
If you don't want rules, you don't play.
You play improv.
You play improv games.
Exactly.
I disagree. Yeah. I disagree. There are plenty of games out there that people ignore some rules. I know a lot of people who will never use encumbrance rules.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They're throwing out part of the rules because it's interfering with their fun.
Yes. However, it's also, nobody is disagreeing with each other there.
Absolutely. Right. It has to be, yes. It has
Everybody has to be on board with
it. In fact, I would say that your sort of like definition of what game mechanics do, instead of being a fair adjudication, I would almost say it needs to be an agreed upon.
Oh, yes. Or collective, even. But agreed upon. I think agreed upon is a better way of describing it.
Because if you're all on the same page, like, you might, in the middle of combat, unless it involves a death, I don't really like looking up rules. Now, I've got stuff set up now, like when we have an Iojitsu duel, I have in my OneNote the Iojitsu rules cut and pasted from the book. They're right there. So I don't have to flip through anything. 2 clicks, I'm at them, and we can just go through. Yes. And I'll never remember them. I'm always, but that's a high stakes thing in Iojitsu duel.
Well, and it doesn't take anything. You're not like stopping and looking at it. It doesn't take any time because it's right there and prepared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a big difference.
And it is a mechanic that's so central to L5R.
Yes.
That to not use that resolution mechanic is kind of a disservice.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because they're done very well, and they build tension as the game goes on. There's a series of rolls, and you get advantages or disadvantages from those rolls as it goes on. And everyone at the table, even if they're not playing, they're like, because you know it's going to end in someone dying sometimes.
Well, and the player characters have made choices with how they spent their points.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a huge deal.
That gets right back to the agreed upon part.
Exactly.
And
absolutely.
And it's one thing that we do in Monster Hearts is there's a kind of an agreed upon thing is your characters can do the things that monster can do. So like Adam's character is like a Frankenstein's monster, so you can super strong and jump over like high fences and shit like that. Whereas in the actual game, in the rules, that doesn't exist. Right. And so as long as they're agreed upon, absolutely. Yeah. And when they're agreed upon, they also feel fair.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, so one of the things about Wrath and Glory, I don't know if you've ever looked at it.
Never have.
It is the new 40K
RPG?
RPG.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the one that just came out?
Yeah.
Really?
And it is
I've been meaning to get this. Okay.
It is made by a German company. And so continental European games, the ones that I have seen, run very differently than English or American games. Like they not that they're intrinsically different, but I mean I think that games that arose there kind of had a different sort of kind of tropes about how rules work. So it is likely that to people who are used to more of like the stat skill systems or even like the old 40K, it's rather confusing. The other thing about the 40K world is that it is one of those ones in which it feels like you can lose. Because, you know, like it feels like you can lose D&D because if you don't get out of the dungeon, you lose, right? Because there's that board game part of it. 40K, like you know, all factions are in an existential crisis.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you do not murder everything, you die. And so the things that you tend to do in these sorts of games are you're in an existential crisis all the time. It feels like you are going to die if you do not murder everything else. And so in that situation, if the rules are not well understood by everybody, in one where it feels like you can quote-unquote lose the game, I can see how somebody who is really invested in their character doing well, especially if they're really into 40K,
Yes.
be upset if what feel like important rules are glossed over.
Absolutely.
I agree with
Yeah.
that.
And I know I can gloss over or fudge rules that I'm really familiar with because I know how it works and still feels fair. So if it is a new, sorry,
No. Finish. What you're
if it's a new game that works very differently, I can see how in this specific instance, I can understand how it would take umbrage. Like that's not how this works. I would not have made a character that works this way if that is how it works.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. By what it seems like Steven's saying is that if you don't allow the opportunity for there to be conversation occasionally, you might miss those opportunities where someone's like, hey, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I put points into this. I'm a huckster in a Deadlands game, and you want me to just roll dice and I don't get the cards dealt to me. And that's totally why I wanted to play my character.
Right.
As I wanted this cool card mechanic.
Yeah. Oh, and I also have these traits that help my card mechanic. But if you don't use the card mechanic, then I don't.
Yeah. So at least having that opportunity, and it doesn't mean that everything has to be a conversation or a negotiation, but part of the reason I like to play role-playing games is I dig understanding the system and how the system impacts play and how it's negotiated when you play. And so there are occasionally times I'll just say, hey, Gina question, like how did that work, or how did you do that? And if it's like it's not time for that because we're crunch time, hopefully I'm reading the table better and I wouldn't ask it, but somebody could just say, oh, remind me and we'll talk about that later. But otherwise, sometimes a lot of people at the table want to understand too, like how that mechanic was engaged and how it was adjudicated, or
I could not care less.
yeah.
For most
things.
I mean, unless I'm running. Like, obviously, when I'm running a game, I care about that. But as
Yeah.
a player, like, very rarely. And I think part of it is just I'm really lucky who I get to play with. I think if I sat down with the GM that I didn't have a lot of trust in, and I think that's a big thing with this particular role, too. I mean, if you sit and you trust your GM and you're at a table with people you trust, like, I'm not so worried about the rules. But there are times, you know, especially at cons and stuff, you're like, okay, like we played in the Laughing Moon, or what do you call it, Wheelhouse games this week. So I was much more interested in how the system worked for that, because I didn't know the GM, I didn't know everyone at the table, I didn't know the system, so there wasn't kind of like trust there. So I don't know. So it there's a level of how much it matters, I think, at least for me at the table.
I think that's true for anybody. Like everybody probably has a scale of
What if, though, let's say you made a Crushy Hida person, and a goblin or something came up, and you hit it with your Tetsubo, and the GM was like, oh yeah, no, it doesn't really do anything. Like, what are you talking about? I made a Crushy Tetsubo person to kill Shadowlands creatures. Oh yeah, no, I don't really think that really works against Shadowlands creatures. Yeah. Well, no, it does.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it works. Like, no.
But see, again,
But you can look that up. You know what? I don't want to mess with the rules right now. I'm just going to say it knocks it back for a little bit, and then we can move on.
Right.
That piss you off?
I don't. Not in every case. Like, I mean, with Stu, I'd be like, no, I trust Stu. There's a reason that it's not working. Like, that will come to play later. Then if it didn't later, I'd be fucking pissed off. But so I think it does matter to me. Whereas if it was someone else I hadn't played with before, that would fucking be. I'd be like annoyed.
What if they literally told you that they didn't have a plan? That's just how they thought it worked by skimming the rules and didn't know.
See, that would be annoying.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, and I'm not saying that that's not a good point. I think you're correct, and especially I think as a player, from the player perspective, if you have trust in the GM, like I trust that Stu knows the rules well enough. Maybe I shouldn't, but no,
I would.
But at least well enough to do like the basics and to have the intent to do well.
I think that if you're like, I don't think how that works, Stu'd be like, oh, let me check.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be a big deal.
Right. No, exactly.
Because you wouldn't say, I don't think that's how it works, unless it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's set forward. Like, the rules lawyer problem is, like, where every single tiny little thing is a fight.
Yeah, that gets annoying. That annoys me more than the other way around, where I'd rather rules get screwed up sometimes than have like the rules lawyer at the table who every single time things become an argument.
See, for me, my tolerance for rules discussions is inversely proportionate to how long combats take. So if I'm playing a game, we're playing a 10th level D&D game or something, and it's like, okay, we've been in this fight for an hour and a half now, and the end is not in sight yet.
Yeah.
And someone's like, oh, and I'm like, oh, well, just go ahead and do a roll a d20, add your strength, and your target number is 15.
Roll the final attack.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just roll a final attack, please.
Right. But I mean, and I mean, just off the top of my head, and if you're going to slow down the game even more to make that combat even fucking longer,
then you die.
Fuck that. Fuck that. Unless it involves a PC death.
I was going to say, but maybe in the very first game, like say you chose to start with 5th level characters or something, and people have a little more complex stuff they can do, you might be a little more willing to hear that whether like actually it says actually.
Well,
but where it says, oh, my move does, and you're like, oh shit, does it?
Right.
And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you do that.
I mean, well, I always expect the players are going to know the rules for their characters.
Yes.
Which is,
I think that is a reasonable expectation.
I think so too. Yep.
And it makes
it's not always the case.
We have talked about things like that before.
Yeah.
Of like, what is a reasonable expectation from a player?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, my tolerance for that stuff goes way down if the game is getting bogged down, or if I feel that the table is starting to like lose interest, or something like that.
Absolutely.
I mean, the guy who's like, oh no, let's look it up, let's make sure we're doing it right. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially if you're teetering on the point of not having fun because it's
or literally just not already.
Right. And the fact is, I don't have to play role-playing games. I do have to mow my lawn or my neighbors complain. No, I pay someone to mow my lawn, so I don't actually mow my lawn. But I have
really obsessed with the lawn right now, guys. Like a lot.
Well, that was his example.
I know.
But I have to wash dishes. If I don't wash dishes, the house is going to smell, and I'm not going to have clean dishes, and you're going to get pests and all kinds of stuff. And so you have to do that. I don't have to play role-playing games. I play role-playing games for fun. I don't do any of that other stuff for fun. I'm like, oh, I'm going to fold laundry. I fucking love folding laundry. I've never said that in my life.
The worst.
I hate folding laundry.
Right?
The worst chore.
And if you're
number one worst chore.
The whole agreed upon thing, I think, is key here, because if you're at a table where people are like, I want to play this game because I like the rule set in this game, and I think it's important that we do that, you have that session zero conversation, and like, okay, well, that's the way we're going to run it, but there are going to be times when it might drag because of that, just so you guys know. That's fine, as long as everyone's still having fun doing it. And if you're not having fun doing it, it's a freaking hobby. It's not a chore or your job. So you can kind of do it however you want. I mean, there's agreed to ways to paint minis, but there's also people who paint them in very odd ways. Like me, I dip them. I dip them in the paint and then brush it off sometimes. Sometimes I use spray paint. I don't care. I'm not... You can have your fun any way you want.
Right.
Yep.
But if you're not having fun, fuck it.
Then why are you doing it? Right.
Yep.
Well, and if not everybody at the table's having fun, I feel like as a GM you have a little bit of obligation there.
Absolutely. Yes.
So it's not just, I hate I hate looking at rules, so this is going to be the rule. like you need to check with your table.
It's got to be agreed upon.
Yeah,
it's got to be agreed
and you might have to like be super specific. Like, okay, we're not going to look up every time there's a rule, but like you were saying, like with player death, like there might be people like if you have Tappy and I playing in a game, I don't give a shit about rules. Tappy loves all the rules. So, but we get along in games because there's
because
we're friends and we drink.
Yeah,
but
well, also I know the rules,
right?
But it's not like I'm quizzing the GM all the time or anything like that.
Right, exactly.
Like,
no.
And when I run very fast and loose.
Yeah.
Because that's how I roll.
Who needs character sheets?
Yeah, character sheets. But that's the thing, when character sheets are holding you back is when you know the rules and how they work well enough that you can make determinations on the fly that are still fair in that agreed upon set
and fairly consistent and exactly because you're comfortable with the rule set.
Yeah. Or when you're so drunk nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
That is the other time.
That is the other time.
Right.
Speaking of which,
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, want to try quad? Because quad.
What is that?
It's a quad.
It's a Belgian, isn't it?
that's a ATV.
I'll have the white, please. Well, I
Steve
know
polished
that.
it off.
I'm from Riverside. I know all about those quads.
Here, I'll open this one. I think you will like this.
And other quads.
Can I try a little bit of that, the quad? Just
Of
a little
course.
tiny bit.
I know I need to try it too. I'm not usually with the flavors.
Just a little tiny bit.
All right.
I don't like Tucker beers.
Next. Are we done with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the email.
Yeah.
Oh,
I feel like we have some GMs that are like, no. I feel like we have some GMs that are like great examples of this, by the way. No.
Well, I'm kidding. She'll tell me how it is.
She has the soup place.
Yeah.
Where's a Kimmy glass?
Space combat isn't boring. Tappy, read that one.
Okay. From Sam from Lakewood. Hi, Happy Jackers. Just wanted to reply to episode 2208's discussion, does space combat always have to be boring? Of course space combat isn't boring. Or at least it doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be.
Most of my favorite RPGs feature space combat heavily, FFG Star Wars, Rogue Trader, etc. And space combat has never felt boring in those games. I think the major disconnect with the question was the core assumption that space combat has to be hugely different than regular combat. That somehow waiting for initiative in order to fire ship cannon is fundamentally different than waiting for initiative in order for the cleric to heal the fighter. All the tricks that a GM knows to keep a street-level fight dynamic should apply just fine to space combat too, especially the tricks for dealing with characters that tend to be more support-y in combat situations, cleric, bard, etc. The GM needs to have a moment before a session where they know there will be space combat and ask themselves a question. What's Bob going to be doing during this fight? And come up with a solid answer. Or at least have a vague idea of things they, quote, can, quote, do during a space fight. I don't know how much I agree with a GM deciding what people should be doing in a combat.
I think he's just saying he's trying to foreshadow in his head what might happen.
Or
is what I thought.
or at least come up with potential things.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Right. Not what they are going to do, but...
So that he can anticipate.
I can kind of see this because it's like... if there's going to be a space combat and the ship is successfully attacked, and let's say there's not mechanics for it, I'm going to say that there's a hull breach that is in a critical part of the ship that's going to have to be addressed by someone.
Right.
Something like that.
All right, I'll get to the rest of it.
And obviously the gunner's not going to do it, and the pilot's not going to do it, because they're busy.
Well, yeah. I mean, in a regular fight, everybody could do one thing if they wanted to.
Yes.
But in a space combat fight, oftentimes people can only do what is in their jurisdiction.
Yes.
And that is one of the disconnects, I think.
Say again?
In a space combat, oftentimes you can only do what is in your predetermined jurisdiction. So if you are a gunner, you get to fire the gun, but you don't get to determine where the boat goes.
Right. If you're an engineer, you make the engines go.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right.
What's the question? What's Bob going to...
this is a question that really should
be addressed as early as character creation. I'm not aware of many games out there that can have, quote, surprise, end quote, space combat, where it isn't a core part of the experience for the games it is available in. And so from session 1, GM should know what each player is going to be doing when macro cannons start firing. Just like a GM should know what the protagonist or doctor should be doing when
Propagandist.
propagandist.
Yeah.
or doctor should be doing when the sniper decides to take a pot shot at the party as they're walking down an alley.
Right. Well, they might hide. Mm-hmm. They might spend the combat hiding, or if the doctor might attend someone if they get shot. Mm-hmm. I mean,
the doctor could pull out a pistol and start blazing away.
He could, sure, and maybe he doesn't have the skill, but why not?
Yeah,
just
fuck it,
covering fire.
Yeah, just throw a grenade.
Right. But the thing is, though, an assumption he's making is that you get to decide what your character can do during character creation.
Yeah,
and if you play my favorite science fiction game, Traveller, you don't get to do that.
That's the best part of Traveller.
You might make a character like Stork made when it's like, wow, your character literally can do nothing at all.
My character in Stork and Dave's Traveller game that had Jack of all trades, and I could do anything. I had it at like +2 or something.
That's huge.
Yeah, no, it was ridiculous.
Gives you like every skill at everything. 0 or something.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Okay.
Jack of all trades 3 less. That is
Jack of all trades 3? Is it 3 less?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was 2.
It might have been 3.
Maybe it's 2 in the. Is it 2 in the new rules?
I only know the ones that I ran.
Oh, okay.
That
said, there are a few key differences with space combat and standard personal combat. But in all these differences, they should really speak in the ways in which void fighting is awesome and not boring at all. Here are the big differences I can think of. Asking, quote unquote, why? Well, no combat in a game should be pointless. This is extra true for space combat. When you're taking ships with hyperspeed, jump drive, displacement engines, whatever, if a ship is staring down a fight it doesn't want to be part of, it can just leave. Turn around, fly away at light speed, whatever. So every time there's space combat situation, it should be meaningful. Well, that's not necessarily true. Lots of games that have jump drives, etc., like takes a long time to jump them, to spin them up. You can't jump if you're within like X number of
circumferences or diameters of the planet. Yeah.
But still, I agree that combat should be meaningful.
Yes.
Your ship is trying to protect the space station from pirate raiders. You're trying to sneak past a planetary blockade to deliver critical metal supplies to citizens below. You're trying to ambush a smuggler carrying political prisoners so that you need to stop the ship and not damage it too much or risk the passengers. Each fight should be distinct with goals, environment, and a real reason to be exchanging plasma bolts. Play around with time. One big difference for a lot of space combats is the increase in assumed round time. In Rogue Trader, for example, 1 round of street combat is about 10 seconds, but 1 round of space combat is closer to half an hour. This is to account for the massive distances and scale of the ships involved. It also lets you have a huge amount of role-playing potential. You may have enough time in a combat for your ship to fire weapons, knock out the enemy's shields, allow a boarding party on who can do a whole different skill work, and have their own mini-adventure before both ships can have reloaded their cannons. Or you have enough time to go below decks and rally a mutinous crew, or contact the nearby planet and beg for assistance. Big ships don't slug it out in real time, and you can and should make allowances for often things that happen between broadsides. Do you want to talk about that real quick, or go on to finish it? Because, I keep thinking of World War I battleships.
Right.
And, I mean, until they blow up, you kind of do one thing.
You just shoot.
You just shoot.
Keep shooting.
And if you're a Marine on one of those if somebody boarded, you'd be really good at fighting off.
If no one boards,
you're hanging out.
You're just kind of sitting there.
Right. Hoping that, the ship doesn't
And you
sink.
can't always have a mutinous crew. You can't always have...
Right.
I agree that there are all these things and that I think it is difficult to make sure that everybody is excited during a space combat. Mm-hmm. Except for one specific instance that I will bring up at the end of this.
I was going to say, I think it depends on the system and like what your setup is.
Well, yeah. That's one of the things about system. Like when a system sets it up, like the new Star Trek system has a lot of things for everybody to do in all the different places, right? And it's one of those ways that the rules really help, like, kind of frame the situation where you can have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And also, how you make a character guarantees that you will be able to do at least one thing.
Yeah.
That will have an impact on it. You can't make, like, even the most, like, hand-fighty of characters are also going to be able to, like, be on a tactical array and fire torpedoes or whatever.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think it's if without some sort of framework, I think it's really difficult. But with correct framework, I think it's a lot easier.
And it can be a lot of fun. Or it can be boring.
Agree.
Yeah.
I love ship combat. Just kind of in general. If you're floating on the sea or in space.
Do you ever read the Lost Fleet series?
No.
I can't remember the name of the guy. The guy that wrote it was like a Navy Commodore or something. So he wrote this story about these two human cultures have been at war, and this guy, his ship blows up, and he goes out in a what do you call them? A life pod, and it's got like stuff in it for suspended animation or whatever, and it malfunctions, and they don't recover the thing for like 100 years. And when they recover it, they've still been at war for the last 100 years. But all of the senior officers by this point, all the senior officers now, never had this kind of training they had when they originally started the war. So all of the tactics that they had honed to use during these ship battles have all been lost. And he comes in, and because they have this screwy way of determining who is like the lead captain if the flag officers are dead, is what your commission date.
Oh, so very much like old English captain's list.
Yes. So guess who's got the longest commission date?
Oh, yeah.
The guy who's been suspended animation for 100 years.
You just
So he's in
me of
charge.
Andromeda for some reason.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. And so he ends up becoming the admiral of this fleet, and it's hundreds of ships. It's like battleship groups and heavy cruiser groups, and I mean he's got like 200 or 300 ships at his command. But the guy describes, he's put a lot of thought into how space combat might actually work. So, you know, these two fleets jump into a system, and they're seeing what each other's doing, but what they're seeing is maybe an hour behind because they only have optics to view everything. And so they're maneuvering around each other and changing their formations in response to the other side changing their formations, and then they always have like a last quick change, like right before they come within weapons range, because the weapons range is pretty close because it's mostly missiles. I mean, and I think they have like something called a Hell Lance, which is like a laser or something. But lasers have a long distance, but they lose power over what is, I can't remember the rule of inverse squared or whatever. Anyway, so pretty much most of the weapons are kind of point blank. So you're going to have these two fleet formations basically pass through each other, and all of the fire control is done by the computers because these ships are moving at like 0.02 light or something. They're moving fast. Humans can't do it, so they're all computer fire control, and the two fleets will pass, and then it's like, okay, what do we lose? And
that was close.
And it's terrifying. I mean,
that's super cool.
If you look at if you think about space combat in that sense, and that's a fairly hard science fiction setting, that's a fucking terrifying combat. It's like, okay, all right, well, we're going to do one last maneuver, and it's going to be controlled by the computer, and so we don't really have anything to do for the next 15 minutes.
And then you could do just like one roll, and then you see what happens.
Right, exactly.
And then you got to move again. That sounds awesome.
But that I think would be interesting. But the players, the individual characters, have some stuff to do, but not a lot, and not in the middle of combat. It's taking care of the repercussions of the combat, which happen in the blink of an eye, and trying to get ready for we're going to do another pass. Do we have enough ships to do another pass? How many ships do they have? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Wow. I just got on a new Reddit that I really like called Fuck Yeah Humanity. And the idea of this Reddit is space stories where the human race isn't bland, but is actually like, really good at stuff. And there's a story on there called Prey that's fucking amazing, where like all the other spacefaring races are herbivores, because that's how they manage to like not kill each other enough to become spacefaring races.
Okay.
That's really smart, actually.
Right. And so there are like these galactic federations of all of these plant-eating species.
Vegans?
Yeah, of vegans. And then humans met this one group first, and then through that group had been introduced to the rest of the Galactic Federation. But they're always wearing full suits so that nobody can see our forward-facing eyes.
Nice.
There was
that's what Predators have.
That was Predators have. So this Galactic Federation runs into another Predator spacefaring series and just are going to get their asses kicked, and the humans know it because they can see that in their formations. Like, no, that's what we would do.
Yeah.
Right. What is that story?
It's called Prey. Is
it a novel or
no? It's just
some guy's writing it on Reddit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
it's so good.
Oh man.
And so and so the humans like go try and tell the Galactic Federation this is going to happen. They're like, what the fuck do you know? You're like a minor species. We've never lost a battle in thousands of years.
Yeah.
Against other vegans.
Whoa.
Against other vegans. Yeah. And so the humans get their own little space fleet off to the side with like the people they met first that have learned their predatory fighting tactics. And then like the battle comes and it's awesome. And humans also, they're the only that have carriers. So we have like little space fighters, and nobody else has space fighters.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because you all work together in a big ship. And so then you're in your formation with all of the other ones, all working together for your common goal.
Oh,
Right.
I love that.
You're all together in your herd.
We're such garbage, but we still end up the heroes.
Because we're omnivores, we're not just predators.
Right, that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a beast either.
Yeah.
I'm pointing at my canines for podcast people.
But I think it's if you're really, really, really into space combats like this person is, I think you can probably get yourself into it enough to have cool space combats.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah. I love that concept so much. It's so cool.
I think we should run a game like that.
You should.
Yeah.
I don't run games with you though. No, I would. I'm just kidding.
Fine then.
I'm mad. Tappy's mad at me because I said I'd run a game, and then I waited too long.
And then she said no.
Yeah. I was like, I've waited too long. I can't plan with someone else. It all has to be in my own head, and I can't communicate. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then she still said no.
I still feel bad.
Okay, so moving on, because we're actually not done with the thing.
Oh,
right.
the thing.
The ship is a character.
The ship is a character. The ship is a home. The Millennium Falcon isn't a piece of equipment on the character sheet. It's Han and Chewie's partner in home.
Yep.
And evidently Lando's ex-girlfriend. It's fine. Go ahead.
You haven't seen the new movie?
No.
Oh yeah.
It's problematic
Solo.
at best.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's okay. Keep
dear.
reading. It's fine. I'm sorry. I shouldn't. Yeah, no. I'm drinking wine. I've become very feminist in the last few minutes. It happens.
And it's not even feminist wine.
No, it's not. It's regular wine.
It's patriarchy wine, huh?
I'm drinking it because I'm drinking
Oh, that's why it's just so hateful.
That's why, yeah.
Patriarchy wine
Full
that you hate.
of bile and anger. No. If I'm drinking it, it's feminist.
I was going to say, I don't think it's wine of the Patriot.
All right. Well, I will drink feminist wine with you
Okay, good.
when I'm done with this beer.
Okay.
Han and Chewie's home.
Oh, yeah. So when the Falcon takes damage, the characters should feel it in more ways than one. That's their history and their family that just got a hole punched through its hole. That room that just got vented is the room your crew raised a child in. The engines that are straining to outmaneuver the incoming fighters, your grandpa installed those and made you run nightly drills learning their maintenance. A ship should never be easily discardable. It is a vital piece of the campaign that should have a history, or personality, history, and stakes for everyone aboard.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I don't know. I mean, if you're in a Traveler game where nobody has a ship and you're just like hijacking or just like hitchhiking from ship to ship, you don't want to die.
Yes.
But the ship doesn't have. I mean,
But if you're
kind of on a one night stand with
if you're
that ship,
if you're playing in a setting where the party has a ship,
yeah, it should be significant.
Yeah.
Send in Isaac Newton. As Mass Effect 2 so ably pointed out, Sir Isaac Newton is the most dangerous man in the galaxy, at least when it comes to fights in space. Let the team play around with that. The basic weaponry on a ship probably lands with enough force to be compared to a nuclear weapon. Give the players an opportunity to use the massive physics-based power of the vessel they're flying in. Make them realize the titanic forces at play. They're crafty PCs. They'll come up with ways to weaponize it. That reminds me of... I forget what it's called now. It was it's a book kind of near futurist, and there's space combat with ships are like these giant cylinders, and how the engines work is they throw out tiny nuclear bombs behind them, and then it explodes and pushes them forward. So alien race came in, and so they turned their ship essentially towards the alien race, and then turned on the engine to tear the ship in half.
Awesome. Wow. Well, this actually reminds me again of Lost Fleet, because there's in one of the books, because there's a ton of books, there's probably 8 or 10 books in there so far. But in one of the books, one side or another loses the battle, and the fleet withdraws, and now you have a hostile fleet in the system, and they're the only ships in the system, and there's a inhabited planet.
Right.
That inhabited planet now is helpless because the battleships have a round called a rock, which is basically just a giant metal ball that they shoot out with like a, I don't know, what do you call it?
Mass driver?
Like a mass driver. And it's going to pick up speed as it's moving towards that planet, and by the time it hits, it's going to land like a hydrogen, with the energy of a hydrogen bomb. And if you run out of those, oh look, there's an asteroid belt.
Yeah.
We can
I'll just go
drop
grab one.
those things.
Yeah. All you need is one, really. I mean, one big one.
Yeah. But I mean, and that's terrifying. If to the people on that planet, it's like the fleet left. There's another fleet out there, and they hate us. Shit.
Yeah.
And they're all dinosaurs. I mean, you could say that that's kind of a thing that people felt back in the Age of Sail. If there's a ship with cannons on it, and you have a city that doesn't.
Yeah.
If you don't have a fort, you're
fucked.
fucked.
Very similar.
And,
yes.
Yeah, they can just shoot at you all day.
And there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it.
I was going to say that if that's more the rule set, like Sails of Glory is like a miniatures game. But if it's more, that's what the rule set supports, is movement, and this is how your movement can be, and how you set up, and your ship is slow or your ship is fast. That, to me, can get a little bit more boring. But if there is stuff that you can do that's not only just what your character class is assigned, but like variable on that, that's where it gets a lot more interesting.
The way I do ship combat in Vast Dominions, it's exactly the same combat as it would be otherwise, except both sides are on moving platforms.
Nice.
Because you have to slow down to engaging speed, or whatever you want to call it. You have a couple mounted weapons, but you can also take your personal weapons and shoot at the guys on the deck of the other ship over there.
Yeah, they used to do that in Age of Sail too.
Absolutely.
Right. And that to me, that didn't slow down combat at all. The only thing with that is one of the characters is occupied being the pilot, and I think the engineer could be occupied as well. But there's other things they can do to make the ship more maneuverable, to increase its turning radius or decrease its turning radius and things like that. Yeah. But it's basically just two platforms made out of hexes on a hex map, and they just move every turn, depending on what their speed is. They move a certain number of hexes, and you're trying to maneuver around each other and just shoot each other until.
Yeah. But that felt like a normal combat, though. That doesn't feel like ship combat.
It literally. That's one of the reasons I did it that way. Is I want it to just be like a normal combat. You're just on moving platforms.
That reminds me of Sky Galleons of Mars.
I don't know Sky Galleons.
It was the miniatures game for Space 1888.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But it's exactly what it says on the page. Sky Galleons on Mars, and they're these moving platforms that either they're like the English or like the Earthlings, or you're like these dirigibles that the Martians have.
I was going to say, is it kind of like John Carter of Mars, like space opera sort of stuff?
I mean, it's making fun of Space 1999, but it's Space 1888.
Right.
Or 1899, I think.
Well, like, Star Wars, FFG, has additional, like, not just what's on your character sheet, but I forget what page number it is. But there's a page number where there's like a whole bunch of stuff that you can do while you're in ship combat.
Yes.
That, which is aiding or setting up people and doing stuff like that. Yeah. So you can do things outside of your...
Rubbing one off for the last time.
Right, exactly. And the reason they include that is because sometimes space combat is boring, and you want to give your characters something to do.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that's become popular for people running FFG, too, is to, and we talked about this, I think, last time, is to bring in the Star Wars miniature game and do that for space combat.
Oh, like X-Wing or something like that?
Yeah, for X-Wing, Bring that. I mean, that is
Imperial
addicting, and you shouldn't
Assault
start that path because it's bad. But it's not bad. It's just really addicting.
If you have a whole table of people who like playing the X-Wing game, that could be fun.
I've heard of a lot of different groups I know have done that, where it's like, oh, today's our space combat, so they bring out X-Wing, they do space combat that way, and then go back to FFG after that.
We did that with the old West End system because there's also a like tabletop Star Wars game that came out at the same time using the same system.
See, when you guys do the Star Trek game, you should break out Starfleet battles.
Starfleet battle is great because you have like two big fleets, and then they go blah 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 blah, and then they limp away as fast as they possibly can.
No bueno.
It's such a good game, though.
It's fun.
It's fun, but
good.
you've got to like that kind of game.
Have you guys ever read the Master and Commander series?
I've read
like 2 books.
The beginning of the first one.
Yeah.
I love that series,
I have
but it's a great example of how
boring
ship combat can be.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, we're going to catch them at the end of the day.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
You know, or, okay, well, 3 days later.
You have a slight advantage with the wind, and in about 6 hours, we're going to be with Canada. And I'm going to write about those 6 hours in terrifying detail. All right, sorry.
I read Tolkien. I can read anything.
This is funny.
Speaking of miniatures, that first game, looking up the new 40K game, I ended up doing what I swore I wouldn't do, which is look at the new 40K 8th edition miniatures, and they're really good. Oh no! And I'm really pissed because I want to buy something.
What are you gonna? What army are you gonna play?
I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I want like small model count because I hate painting, but I also like big smashy things. So I'm thinking Imperial Knights.
Okay.
Or I'm thinking Eldar because they're super, super, super
Eldar
expensive.
Eldar are like the easiest to paint, aren't they? No, there's one.
Know.
I think someone told me that Eldar are usually about the easiest.
Well, I like elves because they're awesome. I like space elves because that's even more awesome. I like psychic space elves because that's rad. And then if you strap them to a jet engine, that's even fucking awesome.
Now, is that the one? They're all the Eldar are the ones that are all in encounter suits, right? They're all in some.
Yeah, that's one faction of them. There's that, and then there's the Harlequins, which are the...
Those are not easy to paint.
Clowns, yeah. Fuck that.
No.
Fuck that, no. And then there are the Dark Eldar, which are like the bondage elves. And they're not what I'm into.
The Dardar.
The Dardar. But, Eldar on a jet bike.
Oh, yeah.
I'm into that. And they also have planes that are powered by magic ghosts that have psychic powers. And rip open reality. Okay. And that's cool.
If you buy an army...
Is that like Scientology?
Yes. That's I think that the Grimdark universe of Warhammer probably was inspired by L. Hubbard. If you end up getting an army, I'll finish my 1,000 Suns.
All right, cool.
Because I got a lot of psychics too.
Yeah, I know. We'll have so many psychics. Our psychic phase will be like 2 hours long. It'll be awesome.
All right.
So terrible.
Go ahead and finish that.
Ella on a jet bike, please don't speak. The door is locked, just you and me. Sorry.
It's fine.
Hope this makes sense, and hope this gives people some ideas to make space combats as exciting as they should be. Sincerely, Sam from Lakewood. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, that was really good.
Thank you, Sam, for the email. We appreciate it. And it's at Lakewood, California, I wonder? Or is that Lakewood? There's probably a Lakewood in every state.
There probably is, but I, of course, automatically thought Lakewood.
Well, yeah.
I'm sure that there's a Lakewood in Minnesota, right?
Every state...
I don't know. You would think so, right?
You have 18,000 lakes.
Yeah.
Every state with lakes has to have a lake.
One tree.
Mm-hmm. Lots of trees. But, yeah, you would think there'd be a Lakewood. I don't know. Probably.
What if there's only a wood lake?
Yeah, there is a Lakewood, Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
It's near the, what's that, French River?
I'll not know this French River.
Lakewood Township.
What?
It's Hawk Ridge.
I've only heard of Minnesota.
It's near the Hawk Ridge Nature Reserve.
All right,
you're familiar with that, yes?
I'm sure this is super important, pertinent, and
all right.
for everybody ever.
Thank you very much for the email.
Yes.
I saw eagles when I went home. There weren't eagles when I was little.
Really?
Yeah, they're everywhere now.
What kind of eagles?
Bald eagles.
Oh, bald eagles, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Nests are ginormous.
There was a bald...
Like, I could sleep in one.
When I was a kid, there was a bald eagle at...
Tabletop RPG.
Hold on, no. There was a bald eagle at Disneyland.
Oh my god!
In the Jungle Cruise.
Seriously?
And I don't remember because they explained to us why it was there,
Oh, it was animatronic.
No. It was actual bald eagle. It was an actual bald eagle.
In like a little cage?
No, it was not in a cage, but for some reason it had come there, and they had been in contact with whatever state organization.
The bald eagle was in contact?
No. Disneyland was.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
This
got a little headset on.
There's
I don't
Sam
know.
the
What
eagle.
in between one of the like, the little little
like
native
the
village
backside of water and something else.
in between one of those things.
Yeah.
You look. He says, "Yeah, if you look over there, you can see the bald eagle." And this bald eagle, just for some reason, decided to roost at the Jungle Cruise.
Please tell me it was on the
Oh my
totem
God,
pole
that's so
thing.
cool.
No, it was just like in its. It wasn't anywhere where there was a bunch of noise.
And he's like, "How you doing?"
And it was just,
off the rails.
Yeah, it was crazy.
How you doing?
A long time ago. I was a kid when it happened. But I wanted to mention I ran 2 Moment of Truth games at the convention.
Okay.
And I'm now confident that the game mechanics are working the way they're supposed to be working.
Lovely.
So I'm not going to revise the core rules at all. The magic system worked great.
Good.
Christopher, I don't want to say his last name.
Good idea.
Played. Was it him?
Stromboli,
Yeah.
that's his last name.
Stromboli. he played the shaman, and would push and add multiples of dice to his roll. He ended up having 2 backfires during the course of the game. By the end of the game, he probably inflicted more damage because his character was a pacifist.
Oh, right. I heard about this. But the pacifist did more damage than anybody else because backfires were crazy.
Maybe combined.
Yeah. Backfires were crazy powerful.
He rolled a little high on a couple of someone's. Oh, is that you?
Nope.
I'm getting like a.
Oh, it might have been me doing this with
That's
my
what
paper.
it is.
Yeah.
You need
And my windscreen's gone.
You need a little windscreen.
Yeah.
But
It popped off.
the magic system worked good, and the the sort of limiting factor of the what's it called, the entropy mechanic, where all the ones that you roll cause you to build up entropy, and once entropy goes past twice your will, bad shit happens. It after the second, he kept pushing because he needed to. He was like, I know I have to make this roll, and I need a bunch of successes for whatever reason. But it was a reasonably effective deterrent. Once you had that one backfire, you aren't going to have another one that day. You're not going to allow. It's like, no, I'm pretty much done.
I'm screwed.
Yeah. So it worked out really well. I've just started working on a horror, like a cosmic horror setting.
I'm really excited about that.
For it's called World Without Gods.
Like
which
Call
is
of
a misnomer.
thing?
Kind of, yeah.
Nice.
But it does. It's a misnomer because there are gods.
Right.
But
they're just bad ones.
Yes, only the bad ones.
Super bad.
And
I'm into this.
It's like what I'm doing is I'm picking historic figures and having like discovered previously lost works discovered. Like Samuel Taylor Coleridge wrote a sequel to Kubla Khan, where he describes this sort of.
We're in Xenodont.
Right. No, but it's like he like travels into the caverns measureless to man and finds the slumbering god at the bottom of the giant pit at this precipice. And so that's the fun part right now is kind of coming up with the mythos and then referencing the literature that supports the mythos. So that's kind of where I am right now. It's going to be
that's hot.
And then when I get sort of close to the first draft, then I'll go back and I'll finish Bloodblade and Tusk because Bloodblade and Tusk is close.
Yeah. The mechanics in general that you got there, top
they're
shelf.
working.
Yeah,
they're
working, really good.
They're working good. They're working good. It's real flexible, and I'm happy with what it
and
does.
still not overly complicated.
Yes. Yeah. Except people have some problems grokking damage early on, usually, but they usually end up figuring it out after a little while.
That's good.
I'm trying to. They had suggested I come up with a fear mechanic or a sanity mechanic or whatever you want to call it that uses the like rolled ones when you, on dice pools, which is what you the entropy mechanic that you use for the magic system.
Right.
Problem is that punishes you when you have a larger dice pool.
Yes.
So I can't really use that.
I also personally really dislike the insanity rules that most games use, and a game that is kind of that thing that instead makes you question your own reality rather than telling you that you are afraid of wine bottles would be really interesting.
Right.
Have you looked at Cthulhu Dark? Gremlins-y.
I have not read it. But it's one of the reasons why Legion, if you've seen that show, is so fucking creepy.
Right?
Because you don't know what is actually happening. You don't know what's real from his perspective.
Right.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
As opposed to you are really, really, really scared of spider webs. Not spiders, those are cool. But spider webs,
where you
fuck that.
question reality and what is reality and what's
Because that's what being schizophrenic is.
Well, that's what I'm...
Yeah.
The only real insanities I'm including so far are... what do they call them?
Mood disorders.
No, the detached... There's like 3 or 4 different kinds of it. One of which is a form of amnesia. And then there's dissociative disorders.
Oh, yes.
Pretty much dissociative disorders are where I'm pointing right now.
Those are also freaky.
Yes.
Cloak72 wants to know, are you using actual mythologies, or are you using your own for the game?
Well, what I'm doing is I'm coming up with... I went through Roman, Greek, Chinese, Native American sort of pantheons, and I said, what scary gods do these have in common? That's all the same god. That's basically what I'm doing. So I'm not naming any of them. They are known by many of these names depending on what culture they're from.
Oh, that's
but
awesome.
They're not. But they don't. I'm not naming them. I'm not making up a name like Glugop.
Yeah.
The dark one.
I like that so much.
The dark tennis player.
So there's like so there's like a generic god of plagues.
Yeah.
Right.
Known as, and then there's a list of names from various cultures that it's known as. But they themselves, gods on these kinds of gods, they wouldn't deal with names.
Yeah.
So.
And for plebeian gods.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Last email?
Yeah, did anyone else play anything this week they want to share? Like, we can't share everything from the con.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's the game that you and I played in the con.
Yeah.
That was fun, because it's the first D&D type game, but I talked about that before.
Yeah.
But
that was the Wheelhouse.
Yeah.
We played it on Sunday.
How was that?
It was fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. My favorite thing, you got to everyone who runs con games, you got to steal this. And he said you could.
I don't know if he really meant it, though, but it's okay.
Oh, but no, he did. And it's I thought was a great prop. He had these little apothecary bottles.
Love those.
And it's like, oh, here's a potion of fire breath. And there's 3 little red D6s in it. So you drink the potion, you pop it, you pour the dice out. That's how much damage you do.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool,
it's really,
a really cool prop.
Yeah.
To handle that kind of thing. It was really
a cute
neat.
Prop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
But yeah, no, I haven't played anything since then. I am playing something on Monday.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
What could it be?
I know.
I know, right? It's Monster Hearts, and you should watch it.
Yeah.
I played a bunch of fun stuff, but I think the one that I would want to mention is I played Rune Quest.
Oh.
The new Rune Quest. But it's like a 40-year-old game.
Yeah. RuneQuest is...
Yeah.
Was it the...
Inglorantha.
Was it the...
In Flagrante.
In Flagrante.
Was it
Inglorantha.
Was it Mongoose that published it for a while?
I do not know.
I don't know. RuneQuest's been around for
RuneQuest is like almost 40 years old, I think. But I don't know who.
Mongoose got the license for it and produced RuneQuest 2, and then they also, when they lost the license, they kept the game mechanics, called it something else. I can't remember what they called it.
Not HeroQuest. Was it HeroQuest? HeroQuest
man.
No, I don't think
I
it was
played
HeroQuest.
HeroQuest way back in the day.
I don't think it was.
That's also got Glorantha and...
I have no idea. That was a board game. It was like if you took D&D and took out all of the role-playing, that's what it was.
because people mentioned Hero Quest multiple times when we were playing it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that from Hero Quest.
Yeah, Hero Quest was when I played it was a board game.
Okay.
Yeah. Rune Quest 2 was Mongoose, and then when they lost the license, they took the Rune Quest name and they called it something else. I don't remember what they called
Quest Rune.
Damn.
Maybe. But I wonder, do you know which version it was?
It's the newest one. I think there was actually a Kickstarter, but so I was trying to figure out, but it is the newest one. But man, it felt there was some trad.
They called it Hero Quest?
Combat was super. It was a lot of fun, but it's really interesting to me to play games that are old school, like retro clones, or have those kind of feel, because like charts and oh my God,
I could run like Rollmaster or something as a one shot.
I only played that once. This had like a.
It's fine. It'll be a one shot. We can just hate on it.
There were 12. It kind of reminded me of Hero, but it was not at all like Hero. It had like 12 phases in combat. And
you put it on when you're done.
Okay, 12 phases in combat, and you of course have ruins to represent your character, and your actions go off on various depending on what you're doing. So contrary to Hero, where like whatever your dex or your speed is going to determine where you're going. Yeah, this was more like I'm going to cast, and there's two different kinds of magic, and you have skills. But if I was going to cast Ruin Magic, that's like badass. That goes off on one, but then it takes, 4 slots to prep it, to re-prep it, and then you have to go again. So it's like you can figure out how many times you go within 12 phases.
It's been a long time since I played anything that crunchy.
Yeah.
Whoa. My ADHD is just
fascinating. But beyond combat, though.
Yeah, it does. Sounds great.
Yeah, no, it was fun. Mm-hmm. And I think if I played it again even with combat like that, it's actually fun.
Right.
It depends on what you're looking for and what you're looking for at that point. But the lore for Glorantha and RuneQuest was freaking awesome.
There's a lot of ardent fans of that setting.
Oh my God, I can imagine, because it was fascinating. Yeah, and you get ruins that represent your character and certain traits, and depending on how strong those traits are. One of my favorite things about that system was, did they have augments when you played? It's something called augments. So you could use a passion that was your character's, or you could use a rune that you would want to use something that you're stronger in, or you could use a skill to augment positively, hopefully, something you were trying to do. So if, for example, my character was like a priestess of a really important god, and I wanted to convince somebody to do something, but I was going to do it via, singing a ballad or a saga. And so I did that before I tried to do my diplomacy. It wasn't diplomacy, it was communication or something. So you can get pluses or bonuses to trying to do your final action by augmenting and I love that whole forking in different stuff. And
yeah. I've tried singing at somebody before to convince them of something
really?
that never works.
And it didn't work?
Yeah, no.
You just gotta roll life. You gotta roll dice. Then you can do it.
Like, let me sing you a song. And they're like, no!
Really? There's people like that?
They're nuts. But it was a blast.
Convince me of something, sing me a song. Yes. This is how this works.
Yeah. And I played the Mountain Witch for the second time, which was a blast. I won't go into detail, but if you have a chance to play.
Like a Yamabushi, but more witchy?
Yeah, you're Ronin, and you've been hired to go slay the Mountain Witch. We had to play in like a 6-hour con slot. And it's tough. It's
6-hour time slot?
Yeah.
Not long enough. Okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't long. Yeah. Okay. It was a very good game, but it really is better if you could play like probably 2 or 3 sessions, because you have these dark fates that need to come out, and you don't want to kind of
okay,
more slow burn.
Cool.
Yeah. 50. I played a thing on Wednesday. I played GeneX, which like legit was like one of the best. Did you mute me? Was
no,
it was because I was trying to put my little poofy thing on.
Yeah, go ahead, Kimmy.
I hate you so much. I hate you. Which is actually one of the like best nights of role playing I've had in a really long time.
Oh, good.
Like you just have, and I was, you're always a little worried because we had like a 3-week hiatus. So you're like, okay, coming back from something, you're gonna you know, it's going to take a while to click and stuff like that. But for just whatever reason, like, everyone clicked, and the stuff we'd kind of been thinking about for our characters all just kind of aligned. There was this amazing scene with Jim that was just amazing. Like seriously, one of the best role play scenes I've ever had. It was just him and I in there, like, talking for probably way too long. I don't know, but it was so good, and it was just so poignant for both our characters. There were just everyone was just like tossing in just amazing stuff like all night. I don't know what the magic was, but it was just like a magic role playing night. I know, it was just...
That's awesome.
It was one of those nights, like, I did not get to sleep till, like, 1:30 in the morning because I was just, like, riding the high of this game. And it was just like, God damn it, I have to be at the gym in, like, 4 hours. God damn it. Yeah. But I want to watch it on YouTube one more time. It'll be fine. It's just... And
God.
It was
you know
so
it's a good
ridiculous.
session when you have to... When you want to go watch it. And
Right
you're
away.
in it.
Yeah,
And you're in it,
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, well, because there were all these moments where... You know, you end up doing something and you're like, oh, I wonder what their reaction was to that, because you're so focused, like Jim and my whole conversation, we're so hyper focused on each other. I'm like, I wonder what Abria's reaction was to that, and it was just fascinating going back and watching that, and it was super fun, and Jib had like the wisdom as a GM to kind of like step back, and because we were in this like estate in England, to just be like, they're just going to be in this house talking to each other for a while. And it's like every once in a while he'd throw in like a handsome NPC, which was fine. And
how many abs did he have?
What? And he smelled slightly of chlorine. I'm sorry, I was on swim team for over a decade. It's a thing with me. But it was just like to know when to get out of the way and when to like insert things in the game and to like add things. He just did a really masterful job of that. Anyway, so it was
cool.
Fucking fascinating, and I love that game anyway, and I enjoy those games. But that one just, for whatever reason, that particular session hit on all cylinders, and that was session number 5. If you're looking to watch it 80 times like I did.
Cool. Very very friend proud of you guys.
Yeah, it was a great game. It was very cool. So.
I just downloaded Wrath and Glory.
Nice.
Cool.
Nice.
The book doesn't come out until December. The print.
Yeah.
In print.
Right.
But
But you did a quick start, right?
No, I just get the... No, it's the... It looks like it's the full rules, but it's on... Drive-through.
Yeah,
the
Drive-through
PDF's on
has...
Nice.
Yes. Yep.
I will check that out because I haven't read the full rules. I was too busy reading about the fucking Eldar.
Oh.
Right. Yeah!
Capabilities.
He hasn't read all the rules because he was too busy reading all the other rules for another thing.
Oh, and I guess there's
That's
tons
adorable.
of revisions to 8th edition.
Oh yeah.
It's terrible.
That's super cute.
God damn it.
I hate errata. I hate
I do
errata.
too.
Yeah.
I mean-
Especially with digital distribution.
Do a new one. Have it be a free download for people who bought it.
Yeah.
Drive-through supports that. I went in. I made I haven't put it on Drive-through yet, but I made a change to. There was a discrepancy in the examples in Moment of Truth because I had different point values for things, and so I went in and fixed it, and then just put it on the site and says, "Here's the." I fixed that thing. It's there now, and so you can go ahead.
You
and
can
look
download
at
it.
Yeah.
One thing I've learned when I like make a hack of a game, basically, is that I have to make an entirely new book, or else everybody will forget that it's been hacked somehow.
Right.
Like for my travel game, we weren't actually in space; they were in like this weird ring of like atmosphere around a gas giant.
Okay.
And so it's kind of airship-y, kind of spaceship-y-esque, and all of like there were like these moons that were going around is where people were, and everybody just forgot that they weren't in space, or most times. And I had to remind them, oh yeah, you're not actually in space. It's cool. You can go outside without a suit.
Right.
So like, I have to make a new book, or else people will forget.
Did you ever read the Integral Trees?
Yes, I did.
The smoke ring? It kind of reminds me of that a
That's
little
exactly
bit.
what I was basing it on.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. But why you couldn't do that with an actual publishing company and just put out a new PDF is mind-boggling.
Unless it's huge changes where the layout's going to have to get messed up. Yeah, that was the biggest problem with the trying to run the FFG L5R beta.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because
It's like, should I trust what I'm reading, or should I go to the smaller book?
Yeah, that was super frustrating.
Whatever. Anyway, last email from Isaac
I will read.
in Tejas.
From Isaac in Texas.
Tejas.
Greetings,
Soy de
Jackers.
Tejanas.
Isaac here with a promised tale of success and what is, in my opinion, my peak as a DM.
No, you can do better.
You can always do better.
You can always do better.
So you're giving up.
Yeah. I peaked.
Twitter? No, I'm just kidding. I run a game for two of my dear friends. The husband and wife are excellent players and very open-minded, and best of all, not assholes or in or out of games. They trust me as a GM, just as much as I trust them players. This is important because the tale I'm about to weave is not your typical story.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right. I told the group that I had an idea for a one-shot. We were in between games and trying to come up with something else to do. And I had this idea I'd been working on and wanted to workshop with them. The setting is 5th edition. I gave them pre-gen characters, a sorcerer and a barbarian. Woohoo! Go barbarians!
I'll play a sorcerer, you play a barbarian.
Yeah! All right. This is how friendship works. All right. That is not in the email. The two woke up in a small town that they had traveled to get away from the big city. The barbarian goes to a bar and orders breakfast. And the two find that the food is mediocre. Even when using magic to make it taste better, it's mediocre.
Oh my god, I want magic to make things taste better.
Oh my god.
He's so amazing. It's like, oh man, I really don't want to eat this protein shake.
Yes.
Oh, it's so delicious.
Protein shakes are amazing. What are you talking about? Never mind, I'll share my protein, it's fine. This has made my players suspicious. The whole point of food in a tavern is that it tastes better than the garbage you end up eating on the road. After the meal, the two check out the town. Everyone is just pleasant, always smiling. Suddenly, the village is attacked, and the two fend off the bandits. The barbarian manages to rip off the bandana, covering the face, only to find the being is faceless. The moment he looks away to warn the sorcerer, all the bodies have vanished, leaving nice little piles of treasure behind.
Oh, nice.
All right.
They're OCD bandits.
Yes.
A girl has no face.
No. The two characters are then told that the bandit camp is in the mountains nearby, on the other side of the forest. They are given a quest and promised a reward, but rather than deal with that, they just want to leave this creepy town and get out before something else bad happens. They try to leave and end up in the forest. Any attempt to leave the forest is met with them just ending up at the entrance again. Frustrated, the two enter the forest, which is always screwy because when the sorcerer tries to fly up to get a better view, the trees go up forever, and they seem to never go very far, except on the path that is before them. Eventually, they make it through the forest and to the mountain. More fights with faceless, nameless enemies. More perfect little piles of loot. The whole time, the players haven't shown distress at all of this. They know something is wrong, but they keep going. All throughout these travels, they will get random headaches when they try to think about their past or try to figure out why something is happening. And it's only through failure of rolls that they begin to see a pattern of all the crazy. The things feeling almost too obvious.
Dun, dun, dun.
In the mountain, they find an entrance to a crypt. And it was here that they decided to really screw with whatever was happening to them. There's a room filled with coffins.
Yes.
We call that Mac's house. And a big door on the other side. Rather than enter the room and check the coffins, the sorcerer just cast fireball and blew everything up. Oh, player character.
Pyromania.
Rather than trying to open the door, they jammed it shut with spikes. Rather than trying to find the secret path, they took a hammer to the wall of the dungeon.
Yeah! I've always thought that was it's like, why do I have to find a secret door?
What is happening?
I've got a pick.
Yeah.
This is a rock wall. I'm a dwarf.
Yeah.
I was made
3 days later, alright, got through it. Like, we're out of rations.
Oh my god.
God damn it, dwarf.
Rather than try to find the secret path, they just took a hammer to the wall of the dungeon. The barbarian swung and broke the wall and saw nothing but shining static beyond. The two players grinned at each other and dove through the opening as skeletons and the lich they were supposed to fight was trying to open the jammed door. They found themselves in a void-like place with nothing around them. Suddenly, the barkeep, the blacksmith, the librarian all appeared, all speaking at the same time, saying that they would be fed to their god, the great eater of all. One amazing fight later...
Mr. Creosote.
Fuck off, I'm full.
But just walk our theme.
Alright.
Dun dun dun. One amazing fight later, the two suddenly lose consciousness, only to wake up being pulled out of a tub of thick liquid. The players are stumped, as I am now asking them questions as the character. Do you know who I am? Do you remember me? And then I let the bomb drop. I call the name of one of the old characters from the campaign from months before. They look at their faces when they realize what happened was amazing. And them literally jumping up and down and cheering the moment was a moment I'll never forget. The two once kidnapped characters are helped out of their bonds. NPCs from the previous game helping them escape the cult base they were in, and all ending with the group getting away on a pirate ship. Months ago, I had run an experimental game for my friends, and it turned into a much longer story. We all had fun. We enjoyed the hijinks involved, but the story had got cut short due to a new player wanting to join, and various other outside reasons. We always look back on those characters fondly. I asked the group if they wanted to pick up the story again, and they enthusiastically agreed. I railroaded, but with purpose. The trust I have in my players are absolute. They knew I wouldn't do something like this without a reason. They wanted the story to be told. They followed the tracks. They broke the tracks. They derailed the train in the most glorious of ways. I never could have pulled this off if my group didn't trust one another to be fair, honest, and willing to trust the choices given. Agency of players is only robbed of them when there is no trust. This is my shining moment as a DM. One I do not think will be topped for a long time to come. Thanks for reading. Isaac in Texas. Drail88 on the forums. P.S. You lost the game. That is a very cool email.
I don't know.
The game of life.
Oh, I lost that a long time ago.
That was a good email. I like that.
Yes.
I think it's a good kind of a example of circling back to what we were talking earlier when I was talking about like trusting Stu as a GM. Like there might be times where like shit seems weird in a game where if it was a GM I didn't trust, it'd be like, I'm out. This isn't cool. Mm-hmm. But like because we've spent almost a decade, it's like literally a decade now actually, like gaming together. Goddamn, we're old.
Yeah.
You're older than I am, but that's okay.
Yes, I am.
Like that trust builds up, and it's like if things seem a little off or railroady or something, like there's a point to this. There's a reason that will probably be really badass and cool. Mm-hmm. So, I like it.
Or sometimes there isn't. But I'm a conspiracy nut.
Right.
So I can make connections between disparate things that happen in the game and come up with a reason why they happen.
Oh, totally.
That's only because I'm a conspiracy nut.
Your pattern recognition is broken.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Is it?
Or is it? I have heavy
Right?
pareidolia. Pareidolia is what it's called? Pareidolia.
What's that?
That's the...
Pangolin?
No, pareidolia is what causes people to recognize patterns.
Nerds! God, both of you.
Well, mine was a floating head that had entrails and shit behind it. That's way cooler. Yeah.
The biggest example of it is that face on Mars.
Oh, right. Uh-huh.
People look at it and they see a face, even though if you look at it, you can see, well, this is a shadow here, and but we see a face.
Right.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me is you've looked at clouds from both sides now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's crazy.
I'm kind of a screwball.
Oh, no, you're not a screwball. Trust me. The conspiracy theories that I've heard...
Oh, no, I know.
It's just, like, Tappy, your scale of screwball is different.
We had a conversation, and I've met someone that made me realize I'm not nearly the screwball.
Really?
I'm a piker. Yes.
That's hilarious.
Yes. All right.
That's awesome,
we done?
though.
I think so. We did the thing?
Maybe.
Huh?
I said we did the thing.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. Oh, wait, the thing. Listeners are happy. Thank you for joining us for season 22, episode 15 of Happy Jacks RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
My name is Gina.
Yeah.
I said it.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week on Friday, 7 p.m. Pacific Time, right here, happyjacks.org/live.
Right.
Thank you very much. We'll leave the song.
Yep.
You suck. You suck.
Trusses go, and the timbers creaked and sag overhead. Like the worst nightmarish dream, I saw the darkest, blackest scene, and I knew then that soon I would be dead. People think me suicidal, but the boss man has a bridle, and he holds it with a grip both cruel and rough. For me children and me wife, I risk my lungs, my soul, my life. For the boss man, he pays me just enough. Keep your pity to yourself, bask in your megawatts of wealth. Think nothing of the blood that feeds our wine. See me right there on the news, enduring endless interviews, while I wait here for the good air to expire. Oh, my labor burns a fire, sending power down that wire, so that you and yours in comfort won't complain. While the smoke it billows black from those tall satanic stacks, while I work here in conditions inhumane. But it's you who's cruel and mean with your gigantic plasma screen. Your conspicuous consumption drives me here. Behind your picket fence, as your porch light burns intense, you know nothing of our plight, our pain, our fear. Keep your pity to yourself, bask in your megawatts of wealth. Think nothing of the blood that feeds our wire. See me right there on the news, enduring endless interviews, while I wait here for the good air to expire. They cry that something must be done for the poor old souls to keep us safe and well. Overhead in private jets, they ain't done nothing for us yet, as we toil in a black and sooty hell. I hear workers overhead trying to reach us for we're dead, but those poor old souls more widows may create. And they work through night and day to find the air gap where we lay, so our families will have something to cremate. Keep your pity to yourself, bask in your megawatts of wealth. Think nothing of the blood that feeds our wire. See me right there on the news, enduring endless interviews, while I wait here for the good air to expire. Keep your pity to yourself, bask in your megawatts of wealth. Think nothing of the blood that feeds our wire. See me right there on the news, enduring endless interviews, while I wait here for the good air to expire.
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire. Bum, 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 bum.